I stared at Jack, my husband of 15 years, wondering if I'd heard him correctly. "You want us to move in with your mother?" The words felt foreign on my tongue, like a phrase from a language I'd never learned. Jack's eyes darted away from mine, focusing on the framed photo of us on our wedding day. "It's just temporary, Claire. Mom's having a hard time since Dad passed. She needs us." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "And what about what we need, Jack? What about our plans?" He shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes about his indifference. "Plans change. Mom's alone now. It's the right thing to do." The right thing. How many times had I heard that phrase throughout our marriage? I bit back a bitter laugh. "And what does Susan think about this?" "She's thrilled," Jack said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Says it'll be like old times. Old times. When Jack was her perfect little boy, and I was just the interloper who'd stolen him away." I could already imagine Susan's critical gaze, her thinly veiled barbs about my shortcomings as a wife and daughter-in-law. "Jack, I don't think." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "It's decided, Claire. We're moving next week." I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. "Next week? But that's so soon. What about my job? Our house?" "You can commute," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "And we'll rent out the house. It'll be good for us, you'll see." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand how ridiculous this all sounded. But years of keeping the peace had trained me well. Instead, I nodded, feeling like a coward. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" Jack called after me. "For a walk," I said, not bothering to look back. The crisp autumn air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped outside. I walked aimlessly, my mind racing with all the implications of Jack's announcement. How had we gotten here? When had my opinions, my desires become so insignificant? Lost in thought, I nearly collided with my neighbor Sarah. "Whoa there, Claire," she said, steadying me. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just got some surprising news. Jack wants us to move in with his mother." Sarah's eyes widened. "Susan, the woman who called you a barren disappointment at your last Christmas dinner?" I winced at the memory. "That's the one." "Oh, honey," Sarah said, pulling me into a hug. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't seem to have much choice in the matter." Sarah pulled back, her hands on my shoulders. "There's always a choice, Claire. You just have to be brave enough to make it." As I walked home, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. I'd spent so long trying to be the perfect wife, to make everyone else happy. Maybe it was time to start thinking about my own happiness. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the unfamiliar car parked in our driveway. As I approached, I saw Jack emerge from the house, followed by a woman I'd never seen before. They were laughing, heads close together in conspiratorial intimacy. My heart stopped as I watched Jack lean in and kiss her cheek, his hand lingering on her waist. The woman climbed into her car and Jack waved goodbye, a smile on his face I hadn't seen in years. As the car pulled away, Jack turned and saw me standing there. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of panic. "Claire," he said, his voice strained, "I can explain." But in that moment I realized there was nothing left to explain. The perfect life I'd been desperately clinging to had been an illusion all along, and now, standing in the fading light of day, I knew that everything was about to change. The moving van pulled away, leaving me standing in Susan's driveway, surrounded by boxes and the suffocating weight of my new reality. Jack was already inside, probably basking in his mother's adoration. I took a deep breath and stepped through the front door, bracing myself for what lay ahead. "There you are, Claire." Susan's voice rang out, sharp as a knife. "I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind." I forced a smile, just making sure we didn't forget anything. Susan's eyes narrowed. "Well, don't just stand there. Start unpacking. I want this mess cleared up before dinner." As I lugged boxes upstairs, I caught snippets of Jack and Susan's conversation from the kitchen. Their laughter felt like a personal affront, a reminder of my outsider status in this house. "Claire?" Jack called. "Can you come down here for a sec?" I descended the stairs, my guard up. Jack and Susan were seated at the kitchen table, matching expressions of false concern on their faces. "Honey," Jack began, his tone sickeningly sweet, "Mom and I were talking, and we think it might be best if you take the guest room for now." I blinked, Sure, I'd misheard. Excuse me? Susan jumped in. It's just that Jack's old room is rather small for two, and well, with your difficulties, we thought you might appreciate the extra space. My difficulties. As if my struggle to conceive was a personal failing, a defect to be hidden away in the guest room. And where will you sleep, Jack? I asked, already knowing the answer. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. I'll take my old room. It'll be easier for work, you know? I bit my tongue, tasting blood. This was about more than sleeping arrangements. This was about erasing me, bit by bit, from their perfect family picture. Fine, I said, my voice eerily calm. I'll take the guest room. As I turned to leave, Susan called out, "Oh, and Claire? Be a dear and start on dinner, won't you? I'm famished." That night, lying alone in the cold guest room, I replayed the scene I'd witnessed in our driveway. The woman, the kiss, Jack's panicked expression when he saw me. I'd been too shocked then to confront him, but now anger bubbled up inside me. I crept downstairs, intent on finally having it out with Jack. But as I approached his door, I heard hushed voices. "You need to be more careful, Jack," Susan whispered. "What if Claire had seen you?" My breath caught in my throat. "Don't worry, Mom," Jack replied. "Claire doesn't suspect a thing. She's too busy trying to be the perfect wife to notice what's right in front of her." I stumbled back, my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Susan knew. She'd known all along about Jack's affair, and worse, she was helping him hide it. Rage, hot and fierce, coursed through me. I wanted to burst into the room, to scream and throw things, but a small, calculating voice in my head held me back. If I confronted them now, they'd only deny it. No, I needed proof. I needed to play their game better than they did. Back in the guest room, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. "Claire?" She answered, groggy with sleep. "What's wrong?" "I need your help," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'm going to take down Jack and Susan, and I need you to be my alibi." There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came back, fully alert. "I'm listening." As I outlined my plan, a sense of purpose washed over me. For years, I'd let Jack and Susan dictate my life, my worth. But no more. They thought they had me cornered, isolated in this house of lies. But they'd underestimated me. Let them think I was the perfect, obedient wife. Let them believe I was clueless and weak. I'd play the part, all while gathering the evidence I needed to blow their carefully constructed world apart. The game was on, and this time I intended to win. The fertility clinic's waiting room was a study in quiet desperation. I sat alone, surrounded by couples holding hands and whispering encouragement. Jack had begged off, claiming an important meeting. I knew better now. "Claire Thompson?" The nurse's voice cut through my thoughts. I followed her to the examination room, my heart heavy. Dr. Patel greeted me with a sympathetic smile. "I'm afraid I don't have good news, Claire," she said gently. "The latest round of treatments hasn't been successful." I nodded, numb. How many times had I sat in this room hoping for a miracle? "Have you and Jack considered other options?" Dr. Patel asked. "There are still avenues we could explore." "I'll discuss it with him," I lied, knowing full well that Jack had lost interest in our fertility journey long ago. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A text from Susan. "Dinner at 6. Don't be late." I arrived home to find Susan in the kitchen, a whirlwind of activity. "There you are," she said, barely looking up. "Start chopping those vegetables. Jack's bringing a guest." My stomach clenched. "A guest?" "Yes, his new assistant. Amanda, I think her name is. Lovely girl." I nearly sliced my finger, my hand shaking with sudden realization. "Amanda, the woman from the driveway." "Oh, and Claire?" Susan's voiced with false concern. "You might want to freshen up. You look a bit worn." I bit back a retort and headed upstairs. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed older, tired. When had I become this shadow of myself? The sound of laughter drifted up from downstairs. I recognized Jack's voice, followed by a lilting female laugh that set my teeth on edge. I descended the stairs slowly, steeling myself. Jack stood in the living room, his arm casually draped over a young woman's shoulders. She was everything I wasn't. Young, vibrant, carefree. "Claire!" Jack called out too loudly. "Come meet Amanda. She's been a godsend at the office." I shook Amanda's hand, noting how she leaned into Jack. "It's so nice to finally meet you," she gushed. "Jack talks about you all the time." "Does he now?" I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Throughout dinner, I watched Jack and Amanda, noting every shared glance, every accidental touch. Susan beamed at them, playing the perfect hostess. "So, Amanda," Susan said, refilling her wine glass, "do you plan on having children someday?" Amanda blushed. "Oh, I'd love to. I've always wanted a big family." "Unlike some people," Susan muttered, her eyes flicking to me. The room fell silent. I set down my fork, the clatter echoing in the sudden quiet. "I'm sorry, Susan," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Susan waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, nothing, dear. It's just, well, you've been trying for so long. Maybe it's time to accept that motherhood isn't in the cards for you." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I managed, fleeing to the kitchen. I gripped the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The kitchen door swung open, and Jack entered. "Claire, what's wrong with you?" he hissed. "You're embarrassing me." I turned to face him, years of pent-up anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "What's wrong with me? You bring your mistress to dinner and ask what's wrong with me?" Jack's face paled. "Keep your voice down," he warned. It's not what you think." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "Tell me, Jack. Tell me I'm wrong." He opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to form the lie. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I'd spent years trying to be the perfect wife, enduring Susan's jabs, Jack's indifference, the painful fertility treatments. For what? For this farce of a family? I brushed past Jack, back into the dining room. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me expectantly. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice ringing clear. "I'm not pregnant. I'll never be pregnant. And you know what? I'm done trying." With that, I walked out of the house, leaving behind a stunned silence. As I stood in the driveway, the cool night air on my face, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. The game had changed, and I was finally ready to play by my own rules. I found myself at my mother's doorstep, tears streaming down my face. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, stroking my hair. "What's happened?" Inside, over a steaming mug of tea, I poured out everything. Jack's affair, Susan's cruelty, the failed fertility treatments. Mom listened, her face a mix of concern and barely contained anger. "Claire," she said when I'd finished, "why are you putting yourself through this?" I stared into my tea, searching for an answer. I wanted the family I never had growing up, the perfect marriage, the white picket fence, the whole package. Mom's eyes softened. "Oh, honey, is that what this has all been about?" She reached for an old photo album, flipping to a picture of us from years ago. There we were, just the 2 of us at my high school graduation, beaming at the camera. "Look at us," she said. "We might not have been the traditional family, but we were happy, weren't we?" I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "You don't need a man or a baby to complete you, Claire. You're already whole." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, washing away years of insecurity and doubt. I'd been so focused on creating the perfect family that I'd lost sight of what truly mattered, my own happiness and self-worth. "What do I do now?" I asked, feeling both liberated and terrified. Mom squeezed my hand. "You fight. Not for Jack or that sham of a marriage, but for yourself." The next morning, I returned to Susan's house with a renewed sense of purpose. I found Jack in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. "Where were you?" he demanded. I was worried sick. I almost laughed at the absurdity of his concern. "I needed some time to think," I said calmly, "and I've made a decision." Jack's eyebrows shot up. "Oh? I'm moving out," I stated, my voice steady. "This isn't working, Jack. It hasn't been for a long time." He set down his mug, his face a mask of disbelief. "You can't be serious. What about our family? Our future?" "What family?" I countered. "The one where you cheat on me and your mother covers for you? The one where I'm constantly reminded of my failures?" Jack's face paled. "You know about Amanda?" "Yes, I know. I'm not as blind as you think I am." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Claire, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Amanda, I promise." For a moment, I wavered. This was everything I'd wanted to hear for so long, but then I remembered my mother's words, and my resolve strengthened. "It's too late, Jack. I deserve better than this." As I turned to leave, Susan appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with anger. "You ungrateful little," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you?" I stood my ground, meeting her gaze. "You've done nothing but tear me down, Susan. But I'm not your punching bag anymore." I brushed past her, heading upstairs to pack my things. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I heard raised voices from below. Jack and Susan were arguing, their words muffled but their tones clear. Suddenly there was a crash, followed by silence. Alarmed, I crept down the stairs. In the living room, I found Jack on his knees, surrounded by shattered glass. Susan stood over him, her face a mask of cold fury. "You fool," she spat. "I told you to be careful, now look what you've done." Jack looked up, his eyes meeting mine. In that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before, fear. "Claire," he whispered, "there's something you need to know." I stood frozen, caught between the urge to flee and a desperate need to uncover the truth. Whatever Jack was about to reveal, I knew it would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room, ready to face whatever came next. I stood in the living room, my heart pounding as I waited for Jack to speak. Susan's eyes darted between us, a mix of fury and fear in her gaze. "Claire," Jack began, his voice trembling, I can't have children." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "What?" I whispered, struggling to comprehend. Jack couldn't meet my eyes. "I've known for years, long before we got married." The room spun around me as the implications sank in. All those fertility treatments, the disappointments, the blame I'd shouldered, it had all been for nothing. "You let me think it was my fault," I said, my voice rising. "You watched me go through treatment after treatment, knowing all along." Susan stepped forward, her face a mask of cold indifference. "It was for the best. Claire, we couldn't let people know Jack was defective." I recoiled at her words, disgust rising in my throat. "So you both decided to let me suffer instead? To make me feel like a failure?" Jack reached for me, but I jerked away. "I'm sorry, Claire. I was afraid you'd leave me if you knew the truth." A bitter laugh escaped me. "And this was better? Lying to me for years, making me think I was broken?" "You don't understand," Susan hissed. "Our family name, our reputation." "Your reputation?" I cut her off, fury building inside me. "Is that all you care about?" Suddenly a memory flashed through my mind. Susan's smug face as she introduced Amanda at dinner. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "That's why you brought Amanda into our lives," I said, turning to Susan. "You were trying to get Jack an heir, weren't you? With or without my knowledge." The guilty look that passed between Jack and Susan confirmed my suspicions. I felt physically ill. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been planning this?" Jack's silence was answer enough. I turned to leave, unable to bear another moment in their presence. "Claire, wait," Jack called after me. "Please, we can work this out. We can adopt or—" I whirled around, years of pent-up anger and hurt pouring out. "Work what out, Jack?" "The years of lies, the manipulation, the fact that your mother was basically pimping you out to your assistant?" Susan gasped, affronted. "How dare you? Everything I've done has been for this family." "No," I said, my voice cold. "Everything you've done has been for yourself, for your precious reputation." I turned to Jack, seeing him clearly for the first time. "And you? You're no better. You were willing to let me believe I was the problem rather than face the truth." Jack's face crumpled. "I love you, Claire. Please don't go." For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, a part of me still longed for the life I'd dreamed of, the family I'd never had. But then I remembered my mother's words. I was already whole. "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this," I said softly. "It's not supposed to make you feel small and worthless." I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. "I'm leaving," I announced. "Not just this house, but this marriage. I deserve better than lies and manipulation." Susan sneered. "And where will you go? You have nothing without us." I met her gaze, standing tall. "I have myself, and that's more than enough." As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Sarah. "How'd it go? Do you need backup?" I smiled, realizing I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. With newfound determination, I typed my reply. "It's over. Can I crash at your place tonight? We have some planning to do." As I hit send, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of my story, not the end. I'd been staying at Sarah's for a week, plotting my next move when the call came. Jack's voice crackled through the speaker, urgent and pleading. "Claire, please, we need to talk. Mom's in the hospital." My first instinct was to hang up, but something in his tone gave me pause. What happened? She collapsed. The doctors, they're not sure. Please, Claire, I need you. Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing to meet him at the hospital. As I walked through the sterile corridors, my mind raced. Was this another manipulation? A ploy to get me back? I found Jack in the waiting room, his face pale and drawn. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable and lost. How is she? I asked, keeping my distance. Stable for now. They're running tests. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. Thank you for coming. We sat in uncomfortable silence until a doctor approached. Mr. Thompson, your mother is awake. She's asking for both of you. Surprised, I followed Jack to Susan's room. She lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and frailer than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes locked onto mine as we entered. Claire, she said, her voice weak. I need to tell you something. Jack tensed beside me. Mom, maybe now's not the time. No, Susan interrupted. She needs to know. I can't carry this anymore. I stepped closer, curiosity overriding my caution. What is it, Susan? She took a shaky breath. Jack's affair. It wasn't his idea. It was mine. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I pushed him into it, Susan continued, tears forming in her eyes. I thought if he got another woman pregnant, we could pass the child off as yours. Save the family name. I staggered back, feeling as if I'd been physically struck. You orchestrated all of this? Jack reached for me, his face a mask of shame. Claire, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up to her, should have told you the truth. But I was beyond hearing his apologies. Years of pain, humiliation, and self-doubt crashed over me like a tidal wave. Every snide comment, every accidental meeting with Amanda, every fertility treatment I'd endured, it had all been part of their sick plan. How could you? I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. How could you do this to me? Susan's face crumpled. I was trying to protect our family, our legacy. I never meant what? I cut her off, my voice rising. Never meant to destroy my self-esteem? Never meant to make me feel worthless and broken? Never meant for me to find out? Jack stepped between us. Claire, please, she's sick. We can talk about this later. But I was done waiting, done being silenced. No, we'll talk about it now. You both used me, manipulated me, lied to me for years. And for what? Your precious family name? I turned to Susan, years of pent-up anger pouring out. You know what, Susan? You didn't just fail to protect your family. You destroyed it. Congratulations. With that, I stormed out of the room, ignoring Jack's calls behind me. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, threatening to crush me entirely. But beneath the pain and anger, I felt something else stirring, a fierce determination. They had taken so much from me, but I refused to let them take anything more. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Everything okay? Need an escape plan? I smiled grimly, a plan forming in my mind. It was time to take back control, to show Jack and Susan exactly what I was capable of. I typed back, meet me at the house. It's time to end this, on my terms. As I left the hospital, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The final battle was coming, and this time, I was ready for war. The dining room buzzed with chatter as our friends gathered for what they thought was a simple dinner party. Little did they know, they were about to witness the implosion of my marriage. I moved through the room, a forced smile plastered on my face, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Jack hovered nearby, his eyes following me nervously. He knew something was off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Claire, darling. Susan's saccharine voice cut through the noise. She'd insisted on attending, despite her recent hospital stay. Everything looks lovely. I turned to her, my smile never wavering. Thank you, Susan. I'm so glad you could make it. As our guests took their seats, I caught Sarah's eye across the table. She gave me a subtle nod, reminding me of our plan. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Jack stood to make a toast, raising his glass. To friends, family, and new beginnings, he said, his eyes meeting mine in a silent plea. I let him finish, waiting for the perfect moment. As the clinking of glasses subsided, I slowly rose to my feet. I'd like to make a toast as well, I announced, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Jack's face paled. Claire, what are you doing? I ignored him, addressing our friends instead. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Your friendship has meant the world to me, especially during difficult times." A hush fell over the room. I could feel all eyes on me waiting. "You see," I continued, "Jack and I have been going through some challenges lately, fertility issues among other things." Susan shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Claire, perhaps this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time, Susan," I cut her off, my voice sharp. "After all, you've played such a crucial role in our marriage. Why don't you tell everyone about your brilliant plan?" Jack stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Claire, stop this. Now." But I was beyond stopping. Years of pain and anger fueled my words. "Did you know that Jack can't have children? That all those fertility treatments I went through were for nothing?" Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Jack's face was ashen, his eyes pleading. "But that's not even the best part," I pressed on, my voice rising. "Tell them, Jack. Tell them about Amanda." "Who's Amanda?" someone asked. I laughed, a bitter sound. "Oh, just the woman Jack's been sleeping with. At his mother's suggestion, I might add." The room erupted into chaos. Friends looked between Jack and me, shock and disbelief on their faces. Susan attempted to interject, but I silenced her with a glare. "You see, Susan here thought it would be a great idea for Jack to get another woman pregnant, pass the baby off as mine to save the precious family name." Jack lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "Claire, that's enough." I wrenched away from him, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Jack, it's not nearly enough. For years, I've been manipulated, lied to, made to feel worthless. Well, I'm done." I turned to our stunned friends. "I'm sorry you all had to witness this, but I couldn't let their lies continue. I couldn't let them win." The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Jack stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and shame. Susan had her head in her hands, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As I looked around at the faces of our friends, some sympathetic, others horrified, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The truth was out. There was no going back now. "I think it's time for me to go," I said quietly, gathering my things. As I walked towards the door, I heard Jack's broken voice behind me. "Claire, please, don't leave." I paused, turning to face him one last time. "I'm not leaving, Jack. I'm escaping." With that, I stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind the shattered remains of my old life. As I walked away from the house, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it, on my own terms. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my new apartment as I sipped my coffee, savoring the quiet. It had been 3 months since the dinner party, 3 months of rebuilding my life piece by piece. The divorce papers sat on the coffee table, signed and ready to be filed. A knock at the door startled me from my reverie. I opened it to find Jack standing there, looking haggard and desperate. "Claire," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. We sat across from each other, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "I've left Susan's house," Jack began. "I've ended things with Amanda. I want to make this right." I studied him, searching for any trace of the man I'd once loved. "It's too late for that, Jack. You know that, don't you?" He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I know. I don't know how to live without you." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old longing, the desire to comfort him. But then I remembered all the lies, all the pain. "You'll learn," I said firmly, "just like I did." Jack's gaze fell on the divorce papers. "So this is really it, then?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. "It is. I hope you find happiness, Jack, but it won't be with me." As he left, I felt a chapter of my life closing. But instead of grief, I felt a surge of excitement for what lay ahead. Later that day, I met Sarah for lunch. She grinned as I approached, raising her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," she said. I clinked my glass against hers, smiling. "And to true friends." As we ate, Sarah leaned in conspiratorially. "So, have you thought about what's next? The world's your oyster now, Claire." I paused, considering. "You know, I think I might go back to school, finish that degree I put on hold when I got married." Sarah beamed. "That's my girl. Show them what you're made of." As we finished our meal, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Proud of you, sweetheart. Dinner tonight?" Warmth spread through my chest. Throughout this ordeal, my mother had been my rock, reminding me of the strength I'd inherited from her. That evening, as we sat in her cozy kitchen, Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "How are you really doing, Claire?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, considering the question. "I'm okay," I said slowly. "Better than okay, actually. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again." Mom nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You know, when your father left, I thought my world had ended, but it was just beginning. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find ourselves." Her words resonated deep within me. I thought of all the years I'd spent trying to fit into the mold of the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, how I'd lost myself in the process. "I think I'm ready to start living for myself," I said, surprised by the conviction in my voice. Mom smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "That's my brave girl." As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the journey. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. I thought of Jack, of Susan, of the life I'd left behind. There was sadness there, yes, but also a profound sense of freedom. I picked up a framed photo from my bedside table. Me at my college graduation, young and full of dreams. I traced my younger self's smile, remembering the hope and ambition I'd once had. "Time to dream again," I whispered to myself. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was older, wiser, with a few more lines around her eyes. But there was a spark there that I hadn't seen in years, a spark of possibility, of life yet to be lived. I smiled at my reflection, feeling a surge of excitement for the future. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready for it, ready to rediscover the woman I'd always been meant to be. As I drifted off to sleep, one thought echoed in my mind. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the beginning. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I clutched the edge of our kitchen counter. Tom stood across from me, his brow furrowed with concern. The weight of my secret pressed down on my chest, threatening to suffocate me. "Laura, honey, what's wrong?" Tom's voice was gentle, but I could hear the worry creeping in. "You've been acting strange all week." I looked up at him, my husband of 25 years. His salt and pepper hair and kind eyes were as familiar to me as my own reflection. We'd built a beautiful life together, full of love and laughter, but now I was about to shatter that perfect image. "Tom, I need to tell you something," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's about your mother." His eyebrows shot up. "My mother? What about her?" I swallowed hard. "I ran into her last week at the grocery store. She said some things, Tom. Terrible things." Tom's face darkened. "What kind of things?" "She told me I wasn't good enough for you," I said, the words tumbling out now. "That I've been holding you back all these years, that you would have been better off without me." Tom's jaw clenched. "She had no right to say that. None at all." "There's more," I continued, my voice shaking. "She threatened to tell you about something from my past. Something I've never told you." Tom reached across the counter and took my hands in his. "Laura, whatever it is, we can face it together. You know that, right?" I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "I know, it's just, I'm scared, Tom. I'm scared of what she might do." Just then, the shrill ring of the telephone cut through the tension. We both jumped, startled by the sudden noise. Tom reached for the phone, his eyes never leaving mine. "Hello?" he answered. His face paled as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Mom, what are you?" "No, slow down. What do you mean you're coming over?" My heart raced as I watched Tom's expression change from confusion to anger. He glanced at me, mouthing, "I'm sorry," before turning his attention back to the call. "Mom, now's not a good time. We can't. Hello? Hello?" Tom stared at the receiver in disbelief. "She hung up. She's on her way over." Panic gripped me. "Tom, I can't face her. Not now. Not after what she said." He crossed the kitchen in 2 quick strides, pulling me into his arms. "It's okay, Laura. I won't let her hurt you. We'll get through this together." As we stood there, locked in an embrace, the doorbell rang. Tom and I looked at each other, fear mirrored in both our eyes. "She's here," I whispered. Tom squeezed my hand. "Remember, I'm on your side. Always." With heavy steps, we made our way to the front door. Tom's hand hesitated on the doorknob for a moment before he turned it, revealing the imposing figure of his mother, Irene. She swept into the house without waiting for an invitation, her eyes immediately locking onto me. "Well, well," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "If it isn't my dear daughter-in-law, We have so much to discuss, don't we? I felt my knees go weak, but Tom's steady presence beside me gave me strength. As Irene's cold gaze bore into me, I knew our perfect life was about to be turned upside down. The battle lines were drawn, and I had no choice but to fight. Irene's presence in our home felt like a dark cloud, suffocating and inescapable. As she settled into our living room, her eyes darted around, judging every detail. "Laura, dear," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet, "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I was in the neighborhood and thought we could have a little chat." Tom squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Mom, we were actually in the middle of something important." Irene waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, nonsense. What could be more important than family?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Actually, Irene, Tom and I were discussing some private matters." Her eyes narrowed. "Private matters? Between a husband and wife? How quaint. I'm sure whatever it is, you can discuss it with me present. After all, we're all family here." Tom stepped forward. "Mom, I think it's best if you—" "I'm making dinner," I blurted out, desperate to diffuse the tension. "Why don't you stay and eat with us, Irene?" Tom shot me a concerned look, but I nodded slightly. Better to keep her close where we could watch her, I thought. Irene's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely. I do hope you've improved your cooking skills since the last time, Laura." As I busied myself in the kitchen, I could hear Irene's voice drifting in from the living room, peppered with criticisms about our decor, our lifestyle, and of course me. Tom's responses were terse, clearly trying to defend me without outright confronting his mother. When dinner was finally ready, we gathered around the table. I'd prepared a roast chicken, Tom's favorite, with all the trimmings. As I set the platter down, I silently prayed for a peaceful meal. Irene took a small bite, her face contorting into a grimace. "Oh my, Laura, is this chicken supposed to be this dry?" I felt my cheeks flush. "I'm sorry if it's not to your liking, Irene." Not to my liking," she interrupted. "My dear, it's barely edible. I don't know how Tom puts up with such subpar cooking. In my day, a wife knew how to properly care for her husband." Tom slammed his fork down. "That's enough, Mom. Laura's cooking is delicious, and I won't have you insulting her in our home." Irene's eyes widened in mock innocence. "Insulting? I'm merely offering constructive criticism. Laura wants to improve, don't you, dear?" I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I think I need some air," I mumbled, pushing away from the table. As I stepped onto our back porch, I heard Tom's raised voice inside, followed by the shrill tones of Irene's protests. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to steady my breathing. A few minutes later, the back door opened and Tom joined me. "I'm so sorry, Laura. I asked her to leave." I turned to him, my voice barely above a whisper. "She hates me, Tom. She always has, and she always will." He pulled me into a tight embrace. "No, honey. She's just set in her ways. But I won't let her treat you like this anymore. I promise." Just then, Irene's voice cut through the night air. "Thomas, I refuse to leave until we discuss this matter properly." Tom sighed, his body tensing. "I should go deal with her." As he turned to leave, I grabbed his arm. "Tom, wait, there's something else I need to tell you, something about my past that Irene threatened to reveal." His eyes searched mine, concern etched across his face. "What is it, Laura?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Before we met, I was—" "Thomas!" Irene's voice interrupted again, closer this time. "I'm waiting." Tom squeezed my hand. "Hold that thought. Let me get rid of her, and then we'll talk. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." As he disappeared back into the house, I leaned against the porch railing, my mind racing. How could I tell Tom the truth about my past? And more importantly, how could we ever find peace with Irene in our lives? The sound of raised voices drifted from inside, and I knew one thing for certain. This battle with Irene was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The annual Thompson family reunion was in full swing, the backyard of Tom's childhood home bustling with relatives from near and far. I stood by the buffet table, nervously adjusting my dress and trying to blend in. Despite being married to Tom for years, I still felt like an outsider at these gatherings. "Laura, darling," Irene's voice cut through the chatter. She glided towards me, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. "I'm so glad you could make it. I was worried you might be too busy, or perhaps too intimidated." I forced a smile. "Of course not, Irene. I wouldn't miss it for the world." She linked her arm through mine, steering me away from the crowd. "Come with me, dear. I have something special to show you." Alarm bells rang in my head, but I couldn't refuse without causing a scene. Tom caught my eye from across the yard, his brow furrowed in concern. I gave him a small nod, signaling I was okay. Irene led me into the house and up to her bedroom. "I wanted to show you this," she said, reaching into her closet and pulling out an ornate wooden box. "It's been in the Thompson family for generations." She opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond necklace. "Beautiful, isn't it? Of course, it's meant to be worn by a true Thompson woman." The implication stung, but I kept my composure. "It's lovely, Irene. Here," she said, suddenly thrusting the box into my hands. "Hold this while I freshen up." Before I could protest, she disappeared into the ensuite bathroom. I stood there, awkwardly clutching the box, unsure what to do. After a few minutes, I set it down on her dresser and made my way back to the party. An hour later, chaos erupted. Irene's shrill voice pierced the air. "It's gone! The necklace is gone!" Guests gathered around as Irene dramatically recounted how she'd shown me the necklace and left me alone with it. All eyes turned to me, suspicion and judgment clear on their faces. "I didn't take it," I said, my voice shaking. "I left it on the dresser and came back down." Irene's eyes narrowed. "Well, then you won't mind if we check your bag, will you?" My heart raced as she snatched my purse from a nearby chair. With a triumphant cry, she pulled out the diamond necklace. "Aha! I knew it." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tom pushed his way to my side, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. "Laura," he whispered, "tell me you didn't." Tears welled in my eyes. "I swear, Tom, I didn't take it. I don't know how it got there." As Irene gloated and the family whispered, a sudden realization hit me. With trembling hands, I reached for Irene's designer handbag, sitting innocently on a nearby table. "What do you think you're doing?" Irene snapped. I upended her bag, and out tumbled her wallet, keys, and the wooden box that had held the necklace. Silence fell over the gathering. Tom's cousin Sarah spoke up. "But Irene, if the box is in your bag, how did the necklace end up in Laura's?" Irene's face paled. I don't know. This is absurd." Tom's eyes met mine, understanding dawning. "Mom," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "did you plant that necklace in Laura's bag?" Irene sputtered, her carefully constructed trap crumbling around her. "Of course not. I would never. This is all a misunderstanding." But the damage was done. Family members began to mutter, casting suspicious glances at Irene instead of me. Tom wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders. "I think it's time we left," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And Mom, we'll be discussing this later." As we walked away, leaving a flustered Irene in our wake, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time, the family had seen through Irene's manipulations. Tom squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry, Laura. I should have believed you immediately." I leaned into him, relief washing over me. "It's okay. We're in this together, remember?" As we drove home, I realized the battle was far from over. Irene wouldn't take this humiliation lightly. But for now, I had won a small victory, and with Tom by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The incessant ringing of the phone jolted me awake. I groaned, glancing at the clock, 3:17 a.m. There was only one person who would call at this ungodly hour. "Irene," I muttered, reaching for the receiver. "Laura! Thank goodness you're awake." Irene's voice crackled through the line, feigning concern. "I had the most terrible dream about Tom. I simply had to call and make sure he was all right." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Tom's fine, Irene. He's sleeping, like most people at this hour." "Well, wake him up. A mother needs to hear her son's voice." "Irene, it's the middle of the night. I'm not waking Tom. Good night." I hung up, my hands shaking with frustration. This had become our new normal since the family reunion fiasco. Irene, unable to openly accuse me anymore, had resorted to more insidious tactics: constant phone calls, day and night, unannounced visits, chance encounters at the grocery store, the bank, even outside my workplace. Tom stirred beside me. "Was that my mother again?" I nodded, sinking back into the pillows. "I'm sorry, I tried not to wake you." He pulled me close, his voice heavy with sleep and worry. "This can't go on, Laura. We need to do something." The next morning, as I was rushing to leave for work, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Irene standing there, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. "Laura, darling, I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd pop by for a quick chat." I glanced at my watch, anxiety rising. Irene, I'm late for work. I really can't. She pushed past me into the house. Oh, nonsense. Your job can wait. Family is more important, isn't it? For the next hour, I sat trapped in my own living room, listening to Irene prattle on about her latest social engagements and not-so-subtle digs at my housekeeping. By the time I finally managed to usher her out, I was over an hour late for work. That evening, Tom and I sat at the kitchen table, both exhausted and on edge. She showed up at my office today, Tom said, his voice tight with anger. Walked right past security, saying she had an urgent family matter to discuss. It was beyond embarrassing. I reached for his hand. Tom, we can't live like this anymore. Your mother she's destroying our lives. He nodded, a pained expression on his face. I know. I've been thinking, maybe we should spend this weekend at your parents' place. Get away for a bit, clear our heads. Relief washed over me. That sounds perfect. We can leave Friday after work. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. A weekend away from Irene's constant presence might be just what we needed to regroup and figure out our next move. Friday afternoon arrived, and we were packing the car when my cell phone rang. It was my mother. Laura, honey, she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I just wanted to let you know. Irene called us. My blood ran cold. What? What did she say? She told us she was worried about you and Tom, said you've been acting strangely. She asked if she could come stay with us this weekend, too, to keep an eye on things. I nearly dropped the phone. Mom, please tell me you didn't agree. The silence on the other end was deafening. I'm sorry, sweetie. She was so insistent, and she is Tom's mother after all. We didn't know how to say no. As I hung up, I felt the walls closing in. Our one refuge, our safe haven, had been invaded. Tom found me slumped against the car, tears streaming down my face. Laura, what's wrong? What happened? I looked up at him, my voice barely a whisper. She's done it again, Tom. Your mother, she's going to be at my parents' house this weekend. Tom's face hardened, a resolve I'd never seen before settling over his features. That's it. This ends now. We're not running anymore, Laura. It's time we faced my mother head-on and put a stop to this once and for all. As we stood there, the weight of his words sinking in, I realized we were at a crossroads. Whatever we decided to do next would change everything. The question was, were we ready for the battle that lay ahead? The moment we arrived at my parents' house, I knew something was terribly wrong. Irene's car was parked in the driveway, and the tension in the air was palpable. Tom squeezed my hand reassuringly as we walked up to the front door. My mother greeted us with a strained smile. Laura, Tom, come in. We're all in the living room. As we entered, I saw Irene perched on the edge of the sofa, her eyes red-rimmed but gleaming with an unsettling intensity. My father sat in his armchair, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his own home. Oh, Thomas, Irene cried, leaping up to embrace Tom. Thank goodness you're here. We have dreadful news. Tom stiffened. What's going on, Mom? Irene's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. It's your father. Henry, he's gone. The room spun around me. Tom's father, Henry, had always been a kind, gentle presence in our lives, a buffer between us and Irene's machinations. And now... What happened? Tom asked, his voice barely audible. A heart attack, Irene said, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. So sudden, so tragic, and now I'm all alone in this cruel world. I watched as Tom struggled to process the news, his grief palpable. But even in this moment of shock, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Irene's behavior. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and family gatherings. Irene insisted on staying with us, claiming she couldn't bear to be alone in her house. Every night I'd lie awake, listening to her sobs echoing through the walls, feeling a mixture of sympathy and suspicion. It was during the reading of Henry's will that things took an unexpected turn. The family lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid there's been some complications with the estate. Irene's head snapped up. What do you mean, complications? It appears that a significant portion of Mr. Thompson's assets were, well, they were liquidated in the months leading up to his passing. The accounts are nearly empty. The room erupted into chaos. Irene wailed dramatically, while other family members whispered furiously among themselves. Tom sat in stunned silence, his face ashen. As we drove home that evening, Tom finally spoke. I can't believe Dad would do this. It doesn't make sense. I hesitated, then voiced the suspicion that had been growing in my mind. Tom, what if it wasn't your father who emptied those accounts? He looked at me sharply. What are you saying, Laura? I'm saying that your mother's grief seems performative. And have you noticed how she's been throwing money around since Henry died? The new car? The expensive clothes? Tom's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. You think my mother stole from my father before he died? I think it's a possibility we can't ignore, I said softly. When we got home, Irene was waiting for us, her face a mask of despair. Oh, Thomas, she cried. I don't know what I'm going to do. With your father gone and the estate in shambles, I'm destitute. I watched as Tom's face softened with sympathy, and my heart sank. Despite everything, he still couldn't see through his mother's manipulations. Irene continued, her voice trembling. I hate to ask this of you, but you're all I have left. Could you and Laura, perhaps, help me out, just until I get back on my feet? Tom looked at me, his eyes pleading. I felt a surge of anger and frustration. This was Irene's endgame, to worm her way into our lives permanently, to bleed us dry emotionally and financially. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could go along with Tom's desire to help his mother, potentially destroying our marriage in the process, or I could take a stand. The truth about my past that I'd been hiding, the secret that Irene had threatened to reveal, suddenly, it didn't seem so important anymore. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face Irene. Actually, I said, my voice steady, we need to talk, all of us. And this time, I'm not holding anything back. The tension in the room was suffocating as I faced Irene, Tom standing uncertainly between us. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I'd been avoiding for years. Irene, I began, my voice surprisingly steady, I know about the money. I know you've been spending recklessly, and now you're in debt. Irene's face contorted with rage. How dare you? You know nothing about my finances. I know more than you think, I countered. I've seen the credit card bills, the loan notices. You've blown through Henry's entire estate in a matter of months. Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. Mom, is this true? Irene's demeanor suddenly shifted, tears welling up in her eyes. Oh, Thomas, she wailed. I didn't know what else to do. I was so lonely, so lost without your father. I just wanted to feel alive again. I watched as Tom's resolve wavered, his instinct to comfort his mother battling with the shock of her deception. I knew I had to act fast. Tom, I said gently, remember what we discussed in the car, about the timing of the accounts being emptied? Realization dawned on his face. Mom, he said slowly, did you start spending Dad's money before he died? Irene's sobs abruptly ceased, her eyes darting between us like a cornered animal. That's preposterous. I would never. We can easily check the bank records, I interrupted. The truth will come out, Irene. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Irene's face hardened, all pretense of grief vanishing. Fine, she spat. So what if I did? Henry was dying anyway. Why should all that money go to waste? Tom stumbled back as if he'd been struck. I can't believe this, he whispered. Irene turned to him, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Darling, you understand, don't you? Your poor mother facing a future all alone. I need your help, Thomas, just a small loan to tide me over. I watched in horror as Tom's expression softened. Mom, No, I said firmly, stepping between them. We're not giving you a cent, Irene. This ends now. Irene's eyes flashed dangerously. Oh, Laura, she hissed, you think you've won, don't you? But you forget, I know your secret, the one you've been too afraid to tell Thomas all these years. My heart raced, but I stood my ground. Go ahead, tell him. I'm not afraid anymore. Tom, Irene said, her voice dripping with venom, did you know your precious wife was once arrested for embezzlement? She's nothing but a common thief. The room fell silent. I closed my eyes, waiting for the fallout, but then I felt Tom's hand slip into mine. I know, he said quietly. My eyes flew open. You know? Tom nodded, squeezing my hand. Laura told me everything last week. We have no secrets between us, Mom. Unlike you. Irene's face drained of color. But she's a criminal. How can you stand by her? Because she made a mistake, owned up to it, and became a better person, Tom replied. She's not perfect, but she's honest, and that's more than I can say for you right now. Irene's composure crumbled entirely. You ungrateful brats, she shrieked. After everything I've done for you, I'll sue you both. I'll tell everyone about Laura's past. Go ahead, I said calmly. We're not afraid of the truth anymore. As Irene continued to rant and rave, Tom turned to me. I think it's time we asked her to leave, he said softly. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But as Tom moved to escort his mother out, Irene suddenly clutched her chest, gasping for air. Mom? Tom cried, rushing to her side. My heart. Irene wheezed, collapsing to the floor. As Tom called for an ambulance, I stood frozen, torn between suspicion of another manipulation and genuine concern. Was this Irene's final desperate play for sympathy, or had our confrontation pushed her too far? As sirens wailed in the distance, I realized that no matter what happened next, our lives would never be the same. The hospital waiting room was a blur of activity, but I felt frozen in place. Tom paced back and forth, his face etched with worry. I couldn't shake the feeling that even now, collapsed and hooked up to machines, Irene was manipulating us. Hours ticked by before a doctor finally approached. Mrs. Thompson is stable, he said. She suffered a mild heart attack, likely brought on by stress. She'll need to stay for observation, but she should make a full recovery. Tom sagged with relief, but I felt a knot forming in my stomach. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As we entered Irene's room, her eyes fluttered open. Thomas, she whispered weakly, reaching for his hand. My darling boy. I hung back, watching as Tom's resolve crumbled in the face of his mother's frailty. She looked so small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, nothing like the scheming woman who had tormented us for years. Mom, Tom said softly, I'm glad you're okay, but we need to talk about what happened. Irene's eyes welled with tears. Oh, Thomas, I've been so foolish. Can you ever forgive me? I promise I'll change. I'll get help for my spending. I'll be better. I saw Tom wavering, his kind heart battling against years of manipulation. I knew I had to act. Irene, I said, stepping forward, we're glad you're recovering, but this doesn't change anything. Your actions have consequences. Her eyes narrowed, the mask of frailty slipping for a moment. Laura, dear, surely you of all people understand the need for second chances? I felt Tom tense beside me, but I stood my ground. I do, but I also understand the difference between genuine remorse and manipulation. This ends now, Irene. We're done. Tom nodded slowly. She's right, Mom. We can't keep doing this. It's not healthy for any of us. Irene's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful children. After everything I've done for you, I'll tell everyone about Laura's past. I'll ruin you both. No, you won't, Tom said firmly. Because if you do, we'll tell everyone about your financial misdeeds. It's over, Mom. We're cutting ties. As we turned to leave, Irene's voice rose to a shriek. You can't leave me. I'm your mother. I'm all alone. In the hallway, Tom leaned against the wall, his body shaking. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his tears soak into my shoulder. We did the right thing, I whispered. It's going to be okay. That night, as we lay in bed, both too wired to sleep, Tom turned to me. We can't stay here, he said. As long as we're in this town, she'll find a way to get to us. I nodded, an idea forming. What if we left? Started fresh somewhere new? Tom's eyes lit up. You mean it? You'd be willing to move? I'd go anywhere with you, I said, squeezing his hand. We could find a quiet town far from here, build a new life, just the two of us. As we began to plan our escape, a sense of excitement replaced the dread that had weighed us down for so long. We stayed up all night, researching towns, looking at houses, dreaming of a future free from Irene's shadow. The next morning, exhausted but determined, we set our plan in motion. We called a realtor, put our house on the market, started packing our essentials. We told no one of our plans, not even my parents. The less people who knew, the less chance Irene had of finding out. Just as we were finalizing the details of our move, my phone rang. It was Irene's number. My hand shook as I answered. Laura? Irene's voice was sickeningly sweet. I think it's time we had a little chat, don't you? Just the two of us. No Tom, no hospitals, no distractions. What do you say? I looked at Tom, who was watching me with concern. In that moment, I knew we had one last battle to face before we could truly be free. All right, Irene, I said, my voice steady. Let's end this once and for all. The quaint little town of Millbrook welcomed us with open arms. As Tom and I unloaded the last of our boxes into our new home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We were finally free. Can you believe it? Tom said, wrapping his arms around me. A fresh start, just like we planned. I leaned into his embrace, savoring the moment. It feels almost too good to be true. We spent the next few weeks settling in, exploring our new neighborhood, and making friends. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. No more looking over my shoulder, no more dreading the ring of the phone. But as autumn turned to winter, a familiar unease began to creep in. What if Irene found us? What if she showed up on our doorstep, ready to shatter our newfound tranquility? One crisp December morning, as I was preparing breakfast, a wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the bathroom before emptying the contents of my stomach. Tom found me there, pale and shaky. "Laura, are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded weakly. I think I might be pregnant." Tom's eyes widened, a mix of joy and fear crossing his face. "Are you sure?" A quick trip to the pharmacy and an anxious wait later, we had our answer. 2 pink lines. We were going to be parents. As the initial shock wore off, excitement took over. We began planning for the nursery, discussing names, dreaming of our future as a family. But with each passing day, a nagging worry grew in the back of my mind. "Tom," I said one evening as we sat by the fireplace, "what if Irene finds out about the baby? What if she tries to worm her way back into our lives?" Tom's jaw clenched. "We won't let her. This is our family, our future. She has no place in it." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart nearly stopped as I read the message. "Congratulations on the little one. I always knew I'd be a grandmother someday. See you soon, Irene." I showed Tom the message, watching as anger and fear battled across his face. "How did she find out?" he whispered. "It doesn't matter," I said, surprising myself with my calm. "What matters is what we do now." We spent the night discussing our options, weighing the pros and cons of each. By morning, we had made our decision. I picked up my phone and dialed Irene's number. She answered on the first ring. Well, she purred. "I was wondering when you'd call." "Listen carefully, Irene," I said, my voice steady. "Yes, I'm pregnant. Yes, you're going to be a grandmother. But you will never, ever be a part of this child's life, not unless you make some serious changes." "How dare you?" she began, but I cut her off. "No, how dare you? You've manipulated and hurt us for years, Heir. If you want any chance at being in this child's life, you need to get help. Real help. Therapy, financial counseling, the works. And even then, it'll be on our terms." There was a long silence on the other end. When Irene finally spoke, her voice was small, almost childlike. "And if I do all that, you'll let me see the baby?" "We'll consider it," I said firmly. "But understand this, one step out of line, one attempt at manipulation, and you're out. For good. This is your last chance. Irene, take it or leave it." Another pause. I understand. I'll do it, for the baby." As I hung up, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time, I had faced Irene on my own terms, without fear or hesitation. Tom pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. 6 months later, as I held our newborn daughter in my arms, I marveled at how much had changed. Irene had kept her word, attending therapy and making real progress. While our relationship was still fragile, there was hope for a better future. As I looked down at my daughter's tiny face, I made a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family. The cycle of manipulation and fear ended with us. Our daughter would know only love, strength, and honesty. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of my little family, I knew that we had truly won. Not just against Irene, but against the fear and doubt that had held us back for so long. We were free, we were happy, and we were ready for whatever life had in store for us next.